Welcome to the Reading for the Glory podcast. I'm your host, Zach Kendrick, editor of Reading for the Glory. Reading for the Glory exists to help followers of Jesus think biblically about books. For more information, please visit readingfortheglory.com. This episode is brought to you in part by Airbender LLC. For our listeners in the Birmingham, Alabama metro area, Airbender is the HVAC company to call for quality and reliable residential heating and cooling services. Airbender is a BBB accredited company that offers the complete suite of HVAC repair and installation services. To request your free estimate, call 205-603-9306 or click the link in today's show notes. Airbender LLC, keeping you comfortable in all seasons. Today on the podcast, I am honored to be joined by Philip Nation. Philip is the Vice President and Bible Publisher at Thomas Nelson Bibles, and he has served as a pastor, a church planner, and education minister in several local churches. He frequently travels to speak in churches and at conferences, and he has a Doctor of Ministry degree from Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. He has also served as a professor, where he most recently served as the Professor of Leadership and Biblical Studies at Houston Christian University. Welcome to the Reading for the Glory podcast, Philip.
Thanks. It's exciting always to get to talk with folks about the work that I get to do, so thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Always glad to have you, and every guest we've had so far. It's been a good lineup so far this season, so we're excited about that. Well, before we get started with our conversation today, we wanted to remind our listeners that this episode is brought to you in part by Beeson Divinity School, located on the beautiful campus of Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. This fall, Beeson will be launching a new Master of Arts in Christian Counseling degree that will seek to help students to synthesize the truths of the Christian faith with practical means to guide people who may be struggling toward a robust and lasting faith. Beeson is committed to in-person learning to help their students prepare for a relational ministry. And you can apply by June 1st to be considered for admission. For more information, you can visit beesondivinity.com, or we will have a link to that in today's show notes. Well, in our conversation with Philip today, we're going to be talking about his work as the Bible publisher at Thomas Nelson Bibles, and in particular, one of their new products. It's not really a new translation. It's been on the market for a while, but Thomas Nelson has recently picked up the New English translation, or the NET translation. And they have several resources in that translation, and we're going to talk to him about that in our conversation today. But before we do that, we always like to ask first-time guests a few icebreaker questions so that our audience can get to know them a little bit better. Are you good with that, Philip?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds good. Well, we always start with, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and lived there until I was, in my mid-20s. Attended Samford University for my undergrad and stayed on at Beeson Divinity School for my master's. And my wife and I, once we got married, then moved to a smaller rural town where I pastored. I began doing full-time pastoral ministry.
Yeah, that's cool. So, not a coincidence then that our sponsor today is Beeson Divinity School. That's cool.
Yeah, that's quite providential. I love Beeson Divinity School and have enjoyed a long friendship with the founding dean, Timothy George, and have gotten to know the new dean, Doug Sweeney, and I was very appreciative of the way that God worked through my life during those years while I was working on my master's.
Yeah. Well, we're also thankful for our partnership with Beeson and they allowing us to do the work we do here at Reading for the Glory. What is your favorite color?
My favorite color is blue. Has been since I was a little boy, and that has not changed. Although now that I have a granddaughter, I feel like the tug toward the more pastel colors that I'll probably need to embrace as the years go on.
Well, there you go. What's your favorite food?
My favorite food, like a good Southerner, would be either steak or fried chicken. I'm a carnivore, and so just put a piece of meat that's grilled to a nice no more than medium, and I'm happy.
There you go. We actually had two previous guests who are also both from the South. One still lives here in the South, and the other lives out in California. But one said steak, and the other one said fried chicken. So there
Uh,
you go.
there you go.
And I guess being from Alabama, you could also say barbecue, maybe too.
You could very
Yeah,
easily.
and Nashville, the Nashville hot chicken, and all that. There's a lot of good food in the South.
Oh yeah.
So, what is your favorite sport to watch?
Alabama football.
Hey, roll
So,
tide.
so I grew up in a household where we didn't just watch a whole lot of sports. However, I've always been a fan of the University of Alabama, and so college football is the one sport that I probably enjoy the most and spend any significant of time keeping up with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm a big Alabama football fan as well, so I'm glad that your favorite sport is Alabama football, not just football. But yeah,
Not just football. There's a
that's right.
there's a distinction to be made.
That's right. We'll have to see how the new coach goes with that transition from a legend to the new coach, which is a pretty good coach, but it'll be hard to live up to Coach Saban.
Oh, absolutely. But sounds like it will be a good season upcoming.
Yeah, I think so too. What is your favorite hobby?
My favorite hobby in this season of life, hobbies come and go really quickly because both of I have two sons and they're both grown and married. And as I mentioned a moment ago, I have a granddaughter, and then we have our second grandchild on the way. And so my wife Angie and I, we spend most of our time, our free time, actually just with our kids or traveling. And so in terms of like, do I whittle, or, do I do cross stitching, or do I like to, cycle? It's none of those things. In We have reached that kind of stage of life where our free time is spent having fun with each other, just kind of kicking around the town. Or we have a son who is married and lives here in town with us, with them. Or we're out to Nebraska where my other son and his wife and our granddaughter live.
Yeah, that's good. You were saying before we hit record that you're based in Nashville. I know Thomas Nelson has a headquarters there, and Nashville is a good place to kick around, as you said. So a lot to
Yeah,
do in Nashville.
it's a fun town. We love living here.
Yeah. What is your favorite book to read besides the Bible?
My favorite book to read besides the Bible. As somebody who's in publishing, I get asked that question a lot in one form or fashion. What's your top 10 books? What's your favorite book? What are your favorite books? And my favorite book changes from season to season. However, the books, I'm going to cheat and just tell you the books that stay at the top of my list of my favorite books to read would be the old, one of our oldest pieces of literature is Beowulf, or H.G. Wells's The Invisible Man. But when it comes to then books that are in the spiritual realm, my favorite books to read there are Humility by Andrew Murray, Spiritual Leadership by Sanders, or The Holiness of God by R.C. Sproul. Those are three very formative books for me.
Yeah, I think those are all very good books, especially those last three. And you're the first one to say Beowulf, so that says a lot about your reading habits. So that's
Yeah.
good. Well, that's the end of our lightning round icebreaker questions. So we'll let you off
Yeah.
the hook there. But thank you for those. It's interesting. And thanks for letting us get to know you a little bit better. So, as we begin our conversation today, as we like to each week, even though we're a podcast that's about reading books, we like to, it's about reading biblically. And so, our goal is to point our listeners and readers of our website as well back to Scripture and the books that we review and the conversation we have with authors and editors and publishers is to be about the book, not just good books. And today, as we talk about the New English translation, I wanted to read from Psalm 119, not the whole psalm, obviously, that would be the entire podcast. But as we talk about the Bible and Bible translation, Psalm 119 is one of the chapters in the Bible that has a lot to say about itself and about God's word. And so we wanted to reflect on these few verses as we begin our time together. I'm going to be reading from Psalm 119, verses 33 to 40. And I'm going to be reading in, of course, the New English Translation. It says this: Teach me, O Lord, the lifestyle prescribed by your statutes, so that I might observe it continually. Give me understanding so that I might observe your law and keep it with all my heart. Guide me in the path of your commands, for I delight to walk in it. Give me a desire for your rules rather than for wealth gained unjustly. Turn my eyes away from what is worthless. Revive me with your word. Confirm to your servant your promise which you made to the one who honors you. Take away the insults that I dread. Indeed, your regulations are good. Look, I long for your precepts. Revive me in your deliverance. So, for our readers who may not be familiar with your work and the work that you do at Thomas Nelson Bibles, can you describe your role that you have there and the work you do there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Thomas Nelson Bibles is one of the publishing entities that is a part of HarperCollins Christian Publishing. And so I have to split my time in between being a businessman and a theologian in terms of running a very large business unit for HarperCollins Christian Publishing that is Thomas Nelson Bibles. And Thomas Nelson Bibles, Thomas Nelson as a publisher has been around for more than 200 years, founded in England, eventually moved over to the United States and then over to New York City and then migrated down to Nashville. I've been with them for 4 years. And so on a monthly basis, I do everything that ranges from acquiring a new general editor who's going to lead a study Bible to helping our editorial team make decisions about certain editions that we're going to publish, about which cross-reference set to put in, to dealing with contracts and inventory management and profit and loss statements. And so I am a trained theologian who now runs what feels like an overly sized business for somebody with my credentials. But it is challenging work, but it's also very rewarding work to lead one of the largest Bible publishing entities really in the history of the world. I stand on the shoulders of greater leaders than myself, and was glad to inherit this assignment and lead forward with it.
Yeah, I think our listeners would be very familiar with Thomas Nelson Publishing in general. I know not just the Bible side of things has translations such as like the King James, the New King James.
Mhm.
Um, the NIV is more on the Zondervan side, I think, but now the new NET and others, but also just books in general. There's a lot of big name Christian authors that have been published by Thomas Nelson books,
Right.
and so listeners would probably be very familiar with, especially if they turn the spine over on their book, they'll see that like cottage logo or whatever
Right, the little
on the
house
top.
that
Yep.
is, yeah, it's an homage back to the original building where Thomas Nelson began back in London, England, those 2 centuries ago.
Yeah. Well, it's a very familiar logo to me, and so I'm sure it's familiar to others as well. But then again, I'm a book nerd, so I like to look at the spine and, and the logos of
Eh,
the publishing houses. So,
yeah,
um, so how did the Lord lead you to get involved with Bible publishing?
I, well, it certainly comes from that I had spent time in publishing already when I worked for almost 9 years at Lifeway. And during the time that I was at Lifeway, I was also in bivocational pastoral ministry for most of the time then. And then God opened the door and gave me assignment to go back into full time local church ministry, and so did that for a few years. And but an old acquaintance who serves as our senior vice president over all of Bible publishing, Spanish publishing, and academic publishing here gave me a call. They contacted me through one of those mediators of executive search firms, and said the kind of of background that you have of both business and theological work in the academy and in the local church is the right mix of what we're looking for. And I had no intention to go back into publishing. I thought I would be in public kind of ministry for the rest of my life, whether that be local church work or itinerant traveling, because I do a fair amount of traveling to preach and leadership training. But when this opportunity was laid in front of me of, hey, would you like to lead one of the oldest and most revered Bible publishing entities that has existed in the English speaking world? You just have to take it seriously. And so my wife Angie and I prayed through the process of what it would mean in terms of moving, and what that would mean for our family in terms of connections with our, even at that point, adult children. And we just felt like this was the next opportunity that God had given to me. I am one of those that I just keep your yes on the table and let God ask the question. One of my sons, my younger son, has entered into vocational ministry, and I have encouraged him that the Lord may lead him to go to one church and stay for the rest of his life, and that's a blessed kind of life to live. Or He may give him more, interrupting assignments, as God has given to me. That there have been a lot of different things that I've done. And so I was familiar with publishing. I love the idea of being able to wake up every day and put more Bibles into the world. And so it was an easy yes when we felt the Spirit's prompting that this was the way to go.
Yeah, I think that that's helpful regarding your response to you know, even though the purpose of our conversation isn't calling necessarily, but keeping your yes on the table. I think
Hmm.
that's helpful when it comes to discerning God's will and um, letting Him shut the doors rather than us shutting the doors. And yeah, I try to live my life that way too, and so I think that's helpful. Hopefully, some listeners will take away from that
Absolutely.
some good things. Well, at a quick glance on the Thomas Nelson website, and we'll be sure to put a link to the Thomas Nelson Bible's website in our show notes today. When someone takes a quick glance on that website, there are a variety of products. We mentioned a few just a minute ago with the New King James, the NET, and others. And in those translations, there are multiple resources and editions of those translations, study Bibles and others. What is Thomas Nelson's vision and mission for Bible publishing and providing a variety of Bible options?
We come at it with a three-pronged approach that we want to publish beautiful Bibles in multiple translations for every age and stage of life. And so rather than us trying to come to you as a Bible reader and say, we want you to fall in love with the translation that we have, instead, we want to come to you and say, what translation do you love? Let's figure out a way that we can publish Bibles in the translations that you trust. And so, from a broad view of the entire HarperCollins Bible group, which includes Zondervan Bibles and Spanish Bibles, we publish we publish a lot of the major translations. I won't say all of them, but a majority of them. And so with Thomas Nelson, we are the publishing house that commissioned the New King James Version back in the early 80s. It was first published in 1982. We are, I think, the largest domestic publisher of the King James Version Bible. And then we have several other translations, like we'll talk about the Net and the International Children's Bible, which is a translation that was translated to a third grade reading level. And then we license out others. But our hope is we want the Bible that you pick up, no matter how much it costs, whether it's an economy Bible or a premium Bible. We want it to be beautiful. We want the typesetting to be easy to read and to be inviting. And then we want to provide study, topical, and types of Bibles that are useful for whether or not you are a grandparent or a mom, a man, a woman, a teenager, somebody who needs something apologetic natured, or somebody who needs something devotionally oriented. So we're trying to make sure that we provide all types of Bibles, no matter what stage of life you're
I
in.
think that's helpful. So you talk about the different Bible translations you have to offer at Thomas Nelson. on the market in general, and I know Thomas Nelson doesn't publish all of these, but there are over 100 English Bible translations, and that number grows. Why would you say that there was a need for one like the New English translation? And do you think that having a different translation maybe in any way like floods the market, or maybe not to use the word cheapens, but makes, if there's too many available, does it make it the Bible unapproachable?
Yeah. Well, the old saying, embarrassment of riches, certainly applies to the number of English translations that we have. So, 20 some odd years ago, when the committee got together to produce the New English translation, a lot of it was motivated out of the fact that there was this very godly businessman who was behind the scenes of it all, who said, I just want to get a new translation posted to the internet. Now, 20 some odd years ago, not all of us, think about how far we've come in 2 decades. There were not any um, really well trafficked Bible websites at that point. And so they wanted to produce one that could be posted on the web, royalty free. And the easiest way for him to get at that was, for a modern translation, was just to make one that he would have the copyright to, so he could post it up for however he wanted. And so for that purpose, it was incredibly helpful. And Biblical Studies Press, that owns the copyright of the New English translation, they're very ministry minded. They want to be able to give it away in as many environments as they possibly can. And so by then licensing it to us to then publish commercially, what the financial windfall that comes from the commercial publication of the net then helps the ministry side for them to be able to propagate that translation as far and wide and as cheaply as possible. And so, are there lots of translations? Absolutely. Will there be more? Yes, yes, there will, as long as people want to translate it and try to hit the sweet spot of what they think is the translation spectrum, whether it's very formal or very dynamic or very in the middle. So I'm grateful for all of these translations, but I also recognize that there are going to be about 10 to 12 that dominate our reading space, and all the rest are helpful, and we should be thankful for them.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. And I love that you mentioned. I think we're going to get into this a little bit more as we go, but I'm glad you went ahead and mentioned the ministry mindset of the NET, because I got familiar with the NET when I was in seminary about 10, 15 years ago, mainly with their Hebrew and Greek tools on netbible.org. Those were very helpful in Greek and Hebrew class. But yeah, here at Reading for the Glory, we actually each day we post a daily scripture, and we use the NET not only because it's a good translation and it's very approachable and readable, but also because of that ministry mindset where there's no you don't have to ask permission to use it and publish it. Yeah, we like to point our readers to the NET.
Evangelical, interdenominational, reformational. At Beeson Divinity School, these core values are the foundation on which we prepare students for a vocation in ministry. Based in Birmingham, Alabama, our graduate degree programs are offered in person and are strengthened by faculty mentoring, small class sizes, and a vibrant community. Take the next step in preparing for ministry at Beeson Divinity School.
As you mentioned, that it was independently published online at first, which I think that's a play on words, the Net Bible. So it was on the
It
net.
is. That
Yeah.
was all
So,
on purpose.
yeah. And that it was recently acquired by Thomas Nelson here in the last few years to publish. I remember seeing a few years ago at a thrift store, like a beta edition, probably before they got involved with Thomas Nelson, of their full notes edition, which I
Hmm.
thought was really interesting. I actually gave it to a pastor friend of mine who could use it for his sermon prep study. But how did Thomas Nelson acquire the rights to publish the NET to a wider audience?
Well, they came to us saying that they had been receiving enough correspondence from readers saying we'd like a physical copy. And so Biblical Studies Press had taken a run at creating their own physical library, physical products. But Bible publishing, the actual physical production, it's very complex and very difficult. And then just the whole issue of if you're going to sell anything in the world, warehousing, distribution, how do you get it into sales channels, all of those kind of details. They wanted to stay on the ministry side of how do we continue to uh, distribute this translation in a digital form, and how do we keep an active scholarly group together updating the translator notes. And so they came to Thomas Nelson saying, would you be interested in becoming the licensor of it? And so they give to us the responsibility not just to publish it publicly and into the marketplace, but also to administrate the license for them. So if there are other commercial for-profit organizations that want to publish a copy of it, then we work with them on that side of it, and it frees up then the ministry to just simply do what they do really well, and it gives us another translation that we can offer to readers in terms of a translation that maybe they've not heard of yet, but we want them to get familiar with because of how useful, how good the translation is, and then how useful the study helps can be.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I'm glad that it's gone to a broader market. Like I said, because I was familiar with it, like I said earlier, in seminary, but I'm glad to see it come to a broader use. When I get a new Bible, when I'm like back when we had Christian bookstores, and we could go and look.
Right.
I know that the Bibles are in secular bookstores as well, but when I go to a bookstore and I look at a new translation, I like to read a couple passages to kind of see how it flows and that sort of thing. I'm going to read a couple more passages so our listeners can hear a little bit of the NET before we move on with the conversation. But the first one I like to look at is Psalm 23. I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but just to kind of give our listeners a little bit of how it flows. It's familiar, but yet it's a little different. It says, "The Lord is my shepherd; I lack nothing. He makes me to he takes me to lush pastures. He leads me to refreshing water. He restores my strength. He leads me down the right paths for the sake of his reputation. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff reassure me." And then John 3:16. It's familiar, but yet a little different. It says, "For this is the way God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life." How is the NET? So we can see that we hear the difference maybe from our other favorite translation. How's the NET different from other translations, and how is it similar?
So I would say that it is different in the sense that the translation committee, led by guys like Hall Harris and Dan Wallace, made the decision that they were not going to shackle themselves to either a fully formal equivalency or dynamic equivalency. In layman's terms, that's word for word or thought for thought. But I think formal and dynamic are better descriptors of what's going on here. And so they made the decision that they were not just going to root themselves on one side of the translation spectrum or the other, but they were going to allow the original languages to lead them in terms of what is the best way to translate this particular word, this phrase, this verse, so that then, like in John chapter 3, verse 16, which is the familiar verse to us all of, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son," but instead the net translates it in this manner God loved the world. And so with those kind of changes, they allow the original languages to lead the way that rather than our current English or another translation. And so most people, when they think about then the net as a translation, they'll put it leaning toward formal, but more dynamic than many of our other very formal, rigid, wooden translations.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, and you can definitely tell that as you read through the NET, and I think that that's helpful regarding not just readability, but also trying to get at the heart of what a text is saying. So just like in Psalm 23, where we're probably more familiar with, "The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want." And in his new book, we're actually going to have him. Well, I think we just had him on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. Um, uh, David Gibson in his new book, the Lord of Psalm 23, and he talks about in that book how the emphasis of that verse is not just I shall not want, where we see the word want as I desire. And so even though the Lord provides everything we need, we still desire more than what he gives us. Even though what he gives us is good and right and perfect and is everything we need, we still desire more than what he gives us. But David talks about in that book that how a more accurate translation is, and that's what the NET says: "The Lord is my shepherd; I lack nothing." I have everything I need in the Lord. Even if I desire more, he has given me all that I need. And in him, I'm fully satisfied.
It is one of the places where we see that there are these slight variations in the English language that if you have the religious history and memory, you've heard somebody exposit that passage before, so you know what it means. But for the first time reader, it doesn't read quite as appropriately or as accurately. One of the other places I would point your listeners' attention to is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, which is the passage of, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given." And it reads in the New King James Version, the end of that verse, "And his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." Again, one of those verses that many of us are familiar with. But that word counselor has a different meaning today than it did 45 years ago. Whereas now, in our day and age, we think of counselor as someone who helps us to manage our emotions. Well, the net translates that word counselor instead as advisor, because that's what the original Hebrew means. It's not somebody who's helping to manage whether or not you feel happy or sad today, but rather this is a person who is advising you about the strategies, about how to make decisions in your life, about what you're going to do next in terms of major decision making. And so that those little places in the net just help us to have a deeper level of insight into what that original manuscript of what God's revelation is to us of who he is. So I love it for those reasons of how it digs into those details for us.
Yeah, I just turned to it. We'll read it real quick so the listeners can hear it. So this is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. It says, "For a child has been born to us, a son has been given to us. He shoulders responsibility and is called Wonderful Advisor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." And then you're right, it has a footnote that says some of these titles have traditionally been translated Wonderful Counselor, but they felt like it was more appropriate for advisor.
Yeah, they even in the footnote they even offer up the opportunity for you to read it as extraordinary strategist.
Yeah, I think that's great. And for the reader of the just I guess like a reference edition that I'm reading from here, it has excellent footnotes. But then they also have a not a new edition, but they have an edition of it because they have this on their website when they originally published it. Over 60,000, if I'm thinking of the number correctly, 60,000 translator notes
Mm-hmm.
that were made available so that readers could see specifically in certain passages where there isn't a definitive way that it could be translated. They had to pick one, but then they give you the different options that they went through, and to allow the reader to not only see what they translated it, but see how they, they basically show their work,
Yeah.
like a math teacher would, show your work. They show their work and how they do that, and that's available in the not only in their website, but also their full notes edition that Thomas Nelson has. How do you think that this type of resource is helpful in Bible study, maybe even in sermon prep and other types of biblical
Yeah.
study?
So I hesitate to ever use the word unique because we misuse it so often. However, the Net Full Notes edition is unique in that you have such a vast amount of notes from the translators. That edition doesn't have, it's not giving you theological commentary. It's just telling you this group of several dozen translators, this is what they were thinking when they translated this verse, this phrase, this word in this manner. And through the translation process, they put up all of their translation choices on the netbible.org website and received over 1 million comments from Bible readers like you and me all across the world. And they took those comments into consideration. They didn't just go with them. I mean, the men and women who worked on this translation are all world class scholars. But then that resulted in, I think the number is now a little over 63,000 translator notes. And so that Net Full Notes edition, if you think about the Bible, it runs about 750,000 words. So that's 3 times the size of probably the longest novel that any of us have ever read. I mean, you think about the longest whatever novel you've read, it's 3 times that. The Net Full Notes edition, just those study notes, are over 2 million words of extra information for the pastor, the Bible study teacher to dig in to say, okay, so this is how they translated it. But like you said, at times they'll also will include in the note, but this is how the NASB translates it, or this is how the NKJV translates it, or this is how it was translated in the Geneva Bible or the KJV Bible. And so they do show their work to give you that extra amount of insight, because we look at it as publishers and say, this is the most transparent and accountable translation that exists, because we want you to know what the translation committee was thinking and why they made this decision, and why you, as a believer, whether you're a leader in the church or you're just you're just running along trying to study your Bible faithfully, why you can come alongside the translation committee and participate in this work of diligent study of God's word.
Yeah, like I said, those notes were very helpful in seminary for myself, and also they had Greek and Hebrew where you could hover over it and click
Mm-hmm.
on it and get the like a dictionary, and but it was, you didn't have to look it up in another resource. It was right there on the other side of the screen where you could just hover over the
Right.
word and it gives
Exactly.
you the definition. That was super helpful for me. That's not available in the full notes edition. That's still on their website though.
Right.
And so we'll be sure to put a link to the netbible.org website so that listeners can grab those resources, both the notes, but also the those Hebrew and Greek, if you want to dive even deeper for your own study, like word studies and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
But you do have it available in a print edition, the full notes, a beautiful edition. We were able to review it from you guys a couple of years ago. We posted it on a Christmas like Christmas gift edition article that we did, and so we got to review one of the leather bound editions, and that was not just a beautifully bound edition, but it was just, again, I loved the notes, and I even used the notes in some studies for some of the writing I do here for Reading for the Glory, but also in my own study as well. But it's also available in a hardback. Is that correct? So it's a little more cost
Yeah,
effective for people.
absolutely. And that's where, if people will bounce over to the thomasnelsonbibles.com site, you'll be able to find the rundown of all the editions that are available, and link you over to all the popular sales sites to be able to buy one. But you're right. It was a typesetting challenge because when you think about other study Bibles, it's unusual for a study Bible to have more than 1 million words of ancillary material. And so we sent this to one of the premier typesetters in the world over in Denmark, and he and his team worked through the process of how do you do this in a volume that doesn't become something that you need a wheelbarrow to move from room to room. And so it's a stunning addition, both because of its content and in its layout.
Yeah, it's still a very, very thick book.
It's a big one.
If somebody was a Bible thumper, they could do some serious damage.
That's right.
But yeah, it's still, like you said, is very economically put together. Even though for all those words and all the resources in there, it's still not too much bigger than like maybe someone's familiar with the ESV Study Bible
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
or any other type of study Bible.
Hmm.
So there's several editions of the NET, and obviously the full notes edition is probably going to be like the best one as far as like with the notes and that sort of thing. But what other editions of the NET that are available? Not just like the reference Bible, of course, but other editions that you have available that you might recommend to someone.
Yeah, obviously, I love all of them because I published them. One of the most recent ones that we've published is called the Timeless Truths Bible, which uses the net as its Bible translation. And then for every chapter of the Bible, we asked a general editor, his name is Dr. Matt Capps, he's a pastor in North Carolina, to comb through the writings of church history from the early church fathers all the way up through the 19th century. And for every chapter of the Bible, he went and found a piece of commentary for that chapter. So it's a single column Bible, and those commentary pieces are out in the outer margins, so it provides a lot of writing and note taking space. And so you get commentary from Augustine and from Matthew Henry and John Calvin and Jonathan Edwards, and from Wesley and Gregory the Great or John Chrysostom. So it's a really wonderful addition that helps you to see how the history of orthodoxy is tied from the earliest moments of the church to our modern age. A second one that I would recommend, and I'll limit myself to two, is the Abide Bible. That again, this is a Bible that doesn't give you theological commentary, but instead it guides you through different spiritual practices so that you can engage the Bible with prayer. There are pieces of artwork that are used as object lessons to draw you back into the scriptures. So there are different types of spiritual guidance throughout that particular edition of the Bible to do exactly what the title says, for you to abide more deeply in the Word of God.
Yeah, my wife actually has a copy of that, so she's enjoyed it in her own study. Is the Timeless Truth Bible, is it available on the market?
It is. It came out just a few months ago.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely have to take a look at that. I'm a big history nerd and been kind of getting into the, what do Christians in the past say about things. So that might be a good resource to pick up for myself and our listeners as well.
Absolutely.
I was doing some reading on the Thomas Nelson website, and I see that an NET study Bible is in the works. Is that correct?
That is correct. I went to my friend, many of us count him as a friend, to Dr. David Dockery, who's one of the greatest Christian education leaders and educators that we've had over the last century. And he's currently the president at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas. And I went to Dr. Dockery and I asked him if he would guide the process and serve as the general editor for a net study Bible. Now, the difference here is that there are study Bibles that are based on themes, like the Timeless Truths, or there are study Bibles that are based around a particular theological lane that you would say, well, that's a very Calvinistic one, or that's a very Wesleyan Bible. And then there are translation-based study Bibles, the NIV study Bible, the NKJV study Bible, the ESV study Bible. And so we asked Dr. Docker if he would lead the charge on creating a translation-based study Bible with the net. So that is in process. It's going to take about 3.5 years for the team of scholars to put together all of the content for it. And so we're looking at releasing it in the year 2027. And it will be a very historical addition to the marketplace, as these are very rare. Only the largest and most used translations normally get a translation-based study Bible. You and I could probably rattle them all off and not have to use both hands, in terms of counting them off on our fingers. So I was ecstatic when Dr. Dockery agreed to serve in this role of leadership for us.
Yeah, we'll definitely be looking forward to that one as well. And maybe have you back on the podcast in 2027 to
Would
talk
love to
about
do
that
it.
one. So you talked about the Thomas Nelson website. Is that the best place that listeners can go to pick up a copy of the NET Bible, or did you point them somewhere else?
I'd tell them to start there because that way you can filter at our website by the translation that you're looking for. You can see all of the different all of the different editions, and then for every edition, all of the different covers that are available. And then at the buy button, it gives you several different options of where do you want to go and look for the prices of these. But at that website, what we've tried to do is replicate for you the experience of standing in a store. There are still lots of independent Christian bookstores. There's lots of places, big box stores to go and look at Bibles. But the photography and the video that we post there, we want it to be helpful for you to feel like, okay, now I know what it would be like to hold this Bible in my hand, because we know that this is a very tactile experience of buying a Bible. And so we're trying to replicate that as best as we could online there at thomasnelsonbibles.com.
I think that's good. And I have used that website looking at the different Bibles that you have available. And I would agree. It's very, very helpful, the different shots you have of the Bibles and the videos and the description and that sort of thing. So yeah, we'll be sure to put a link to Thomas Nelson Bible's website on our show notes. So we were just talking about the Timeless Truths Bible that just released, and then the upcoming NET study Bible. Are there any future NET translation resources that are coming out before the study Bible, or any other translation products that you'd like to point our listeners to?
Yeah, with our New English Translation editions, part of what we're doing is we're going to be updating some of the ones that we currently have, because we've got plenty of personal size, large print, double column, single column, all of these Bibles that are available. We have a whole suite of Bible journals where if you just want one book of the Bible, and then for every page of text, you have a blank page to take notes. We've got those available. And so we would love for people to take a look at all of those. And but then in terms of other Bibles, every quarter we're going to release new Bibles, whether it's the New King James Version or the Net, or we're expanding a particular study Bible into a new translation. So I would say get on one of our e-newsletter lists so that you'll be up to date as to what the next great editions that we're going to release. But what we have found is that for everybody who wants a study Bible, it feels like there's 100 people behind them that say, I just want a Bible. And so one of the Bibles that we released just about a month ago we're referring to it as an ultra thin line Bible in both the King James Version and the New King James. That is it's super easy to throw in your backpack. It's easy to carry around with you. So it's just a really small footprint, but still a very readable typeface size. And so those are the kind of Bibles that we know that, lots of people just want the next whatever Bible that's just easy for me to take with me on the go. And then for those that are like one step, like, well, I need a little bit of reference material, we recently released a compact center column reference Bible. People, who, if you want those 43,000 cross references so that you can navigate how does this verse connect with other parts of the Bible, I would say look one of those up, and that provides for you a great resource as well.
Like I said, we'll be sure to put a link to that in today's show notes. And for listeners, you mentioned the Thomas Nelson e-newsletter. Is that available for them to sign up on the website as well?
Absolutely.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Philip, for joining us today on the Reading for the Glory podcast. It was definitely a pleasure to talk with you.
It's great to talk with you as well, and always happy to come back and talk more about what God is doing through our particular work and how we're trying to just serve the Christian community at large with new and helpful addition of God's Word.
Amen. Well, thank you for that. And like I said, we'll have to have you back soon.
All right.
We'd also like to thank our listeners for being a part of the conversation today. As I've mentioned throughout the conversation, we'll put a link to the Thomas Nelson website so that you can peruse the NET and other Bible resources that they have available there. And I'll also be sure to put a link to the NET's website, netbible.org, so that you can check out not only those 63,000 study notes and translator notes, but you can check out their Hebrew and Greek resources as well. If you have a question, a comment, or would simply just like to drop us a note, be sure to connect with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Threads, X, and Instagram. You can also check us out on YouTube. Be sure to follow us to stay up to date on our latest articles, book reviews, and podcasts. If you'd like to contact us by email, you can write us at readingfortheglory.com/contact. We also ask that you be sure to subscribe to leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. That would be very helpful for us. And we look forward to having you join us again next time on the Reading for the Glory podcast as we think biblically about books. Thank you for listening to the Reading for the Glory podcast. If you enjoyed today's content, we would like to invite you to consider becoming one of our ministry partners. Our ministry partners help to support the ongoing ministry of Reading for the Glory, which allows us to produce content such as our book reviews, our study series, and this podcast. For more information, please visit readingfortheglory.com/partners. And thank you for your support.